The Overwatch League mid-season roster fiascos continue, with the Shanghai Dragons putting their hat into the mix by announcing that the Fleta tank experiment is officially over. He'll be moving over to a full-time coaching duty, and Fate is coming back to the main roster to assume the tank duties. Well, Shanghai fans, you can officially breathe a sigh of relief. You no longer have to watch Fleta bash his head into a wall over and over again playing Winston, when we all know that is an absolutely terrible idea. He gave it one last go to try and revive his career as it's been on this downward trend, but it just wasn't meant to be. He just doesn't have any experience on this role, and not being able to play anything aside from Winston for the most part, thanks to their coaching, only made the situation even more difficult for him. Honestly, I kind of feel bad for Fleta in a way. There's a world where he could have been a bit more effective and realized his potential a bit more if the meta more so went his way and Coach Moon allowed for him to play things aside from Winston, because on the more mechanically intensive off-tank heroes, he could have been pretty decent. Maybe not out of this world, but definitely more effective than what we saw like 90% of the time. From what I had heard to begin with, Fleta was kind of losing interest in a professional career during this upcoming season. He was contemplating his future during the offseason, maybe thinking about going to Valorant. He moved over to tank to try and get his motivation back, and for a while it worked, but again, the Dragons performance-wise just aren't where they need to be, and he is part of the reason why, so you've got to make this change. From the looks of it, it feels to me like Fleta's professional playing career in the Overwatch League is done for. There's probably nothing left for him. He didn't look too great on DPS in 2022. His tank experiment was absolutely a failure, so it's time for him to move on and maybe pursue endeavors in a coaching career. He might prove himself on Coach Moon's staff this year and provide himself a decent little future, at least for the time being. It's not like this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He has more knowledge than most. He is a veteran, he's seen his fair share of interesting situations, he knows this game inside and out, so maybe there's still hope for him to be around Overwatch. I'm just glad the Dragons aren't sitting around and doing absolutely nothing. It'd be cool if they maybe made another type of move, but just adjusting this tank situation is really good and should help them out a lot just in terms of their general competence. I'm not sure how many wins it's going to translate into, but it's a start by having someone who actually knows what he's doing, who has the experience on this role. Fate is familiar with Coach Moon's system. He is a veteran of this league who has proved himself multiple times in the past, so I think it's a pretty good fit. Fate is an excellent communicator and a team-first kind of guy that immediately boosts your potential as a team. That is something the Dragons have missed greatly this season, as it's mostly just been on their DPS and occasionally ERAS. Being more well-balanced is going to help them out in the long run, especially when Fate is setting up good plays for his solid DPS line. They could become a pretty decent trio if they can figure it out. And I have faith they will figure it out relatively soon, because again, Fate knows Coach Moon's coaching style like the back of his hand. I know a lot of people are going to point fingers at Coach Moon for once again just sticking with guys that he knows. He's working with Fate for like the millionth time now, but at the end of the day, with an emergency signing like this, trying to adjust really quick when you don't have a lot of time, you have to go with what you know. It increases your chances of succeeding. So in a scenario like this, I really don't think it's a bad idea at all to pick up Fate. He's a very safe option, and he can be reliable. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about how he can do as a solo tank player. We really don't know what his ceiling is like there yet, and he hasn't exactly played the same level of Overwatch since 2022 started. A lot of people think he's kind of washed, but at the very least, he is still motivated to prove himself. He definitely will make the most of this opportunity. The guy was literally willing to grind in contenders again, despite being a multi-year Overwatch League veteran. So I'd give him a shot. Anything is better than having the Fleta tank. In my opinion, that motivational boost will serve him very well. I may be a little biased because I'm a major Fate fan, but that's just how I feel. And honestly, from what I've seen during his Panthera matches, he hasn't looked that bad at all as a solo tank flexing onto various roles. His Sigma was definitely better than I thought it would be. His Ramatra is like okay at least. And with the Dragons, just knowing their system and how much they like Winston, he's going to be a pretty big help. He's obviously not a top tier Winston player in the world these days or anything, but he has a lot more experience than Fleta. He's going to make a lot more of the right decisions, and the team cohesion will look a lot better as a a result. This is a great move to make on such short notice, and I'm very hopeful that the Dragons will at least look somewhat competent now that they no longer have Fleta off-rolling. Now it's just basically having Gundam Jin at main support, and if that's your biggest weakness, it's not nearly as bad. If you can just have a more stable tank who's not going to feed as much, who can better communicate with his team and get more value out of his mechanics and experience on this hero, and can just make more room for his playmaking DPS, the Dragons could be a decent threat. Viper and Hisu have been doing all they can this season, and just with a little bit more support and a little bit more space bought for them, they could really pop off. I have no doubt in my mind that Fate will set them up very well. That's what he's been known for the last couple of years. That's what ultimately helped change the Dragons into a championship team back in 2021. It's the place that he sets up. He is very team-centric, and I think Dragons fans and the rest of the world will appreciate what he does compared to Fleta. Shanghai might be performing pretty poorly so far, but unlike the West, where your record really matters, the Dragons still have a chance to turn this around and maybe be in contention for a playoff spot if they can do well in the knockouts at the end of this year. That's what it really comes down to. Your performances in these tournaments is what matters more than the qualifiers. So if Dragons can improve over time with these qualifiers coming up and then play well when it matters, maybe it's not too late for them. Obviously, it's going to take a big time effort, but right now they're in a situation where they may no longer be the worst team in the East if Fate can be effective enough. That's the big question though. Can Fate be that guy? Can it be enough? Obviously, he's an insta upgrade over Fleta just for the experience factor, but how much can it go beyond that just knowing what he's been the last couple of seasons? Fate's definitely going to help out the DPS, but I just don't know if it will be enough. Can he be good enough individually? Can he compare to some of these other elite tank players of the game at this point in his career? That will be the thing he has to prove to the rest of the world if he wants the Dragons to get to a new level, be competitive, and still have some sort of semblance of a season left. It's going to be tough for him, I won't lie to you, because he's used to being the assist kind of guy. He's used to facilitating. He's not used to being the carry. That's never been his role in all of his years as a professional. But tank here in Overwatch 2, the role has significantly evolved, and you have to be a big-time playmaker, and I don't know if he has it in him. If the Dragons want to take that next step, it's going to be on him to do that. Not just be an experienced tank player who doesn't feed every 5 seconds on Monkey, but to be proactive and to be a big playmaker, because Viper and Hisu cannot do this alone. I have my doubts and skepticism as much as I love the guy, but at the very least, this just might be what the Dragons needed to no longer be the worst team in the East. Them and the Dynasty might be a lot closer now, and it's all thanks to this move. Just the fact that the Dragons have a real tank player is a massive W. There's a lot of questions that the Dragons will have to answer heading into Half 2. There is absolutely no guarantees just by getting a tank player alone with how much of a mess this team has been in general, but bare minimum, a signing like this is going to make them a lot more fun to watch, and that's all we can really ask for, because if we're being honest with ourselves, most of their games have been absolute agony. And when you lose to 2 contenders teams in a row like how they did, it's just so embarrassing and so unacceptable no matter how bad you are at the Overwatch League level. So I'm glad that they're making this change and they're moving forward with someone they know and love over there. It's going to be great to see Fate back in the Overwatch League, and I'm very excited to see how much he can elevate this Dragons team as we head into July. Make sure to let me know your thoughts about the Fleta for Fate tank swap down in the comments below, and be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, if you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.